Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where healing and mamahood intersect. I'm Emily, your host. Join us as we discover practical strategies to nurture ourselves with kindness and understanding. Stay tuned for insights and inspiration to support you on your path of healing and growth. Let's dive in together. This is Mamahood After Trauma. Hello, Mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am so thrilled that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to this episode. This episode, we are going to dive into talking about creating an equitable home environment. So many of us as women have been taught and modeled, shown by past generations, those women who raised us, to lose ourselves in our marriages or relationships, in our family life, taking care of our kids. And we often, in many cases, not all, but many, become the default caregiver and do the majority of the household chores, even when we are employed outside of the home. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. And the speaker that we're going to hear from today is going to share on her life's work. She is an advocate for helping women to negotiate a more fair and balanced division of labor in the home. Her name is Sharon Costanzo. She's a relationship coach, and she's the host of the Respected and Connected podcast. She specializes in helping couples navigate conflict within their marriage so they can create a more intimate, collaborative relationship with less resentment and friction. Sharon was a speaker at our November 2024 Mamahood After Trauma Symposium. She brought so much value to the table, and I hope that you are able to enjoy her talk. Without further ado, here's Sharon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Costanzo. I'm a relationship coach who specializes in helping women and couples navigate conflict and create more equitable partnerships. And I'm just wondering, as we get started, I wonder how many of you relate to this. Does it ever seem like no matter how hard you work and how much you do, that nobody appreciates it and nobody takes you seriously? I grew up seeing the women in my life feeling that way. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for most of my growing up. I think that she really would have loved to have a career, but she didn't feel like that was possible for her. And my parents had a very traditional marriage. My dad worked and my mom did everything at home. And I got this message that, like, if I wanted to be taken seriously, if I wanted a different future for myself than the lifestyle that my mom had, and she always kind of resented, that I needed to do something different. And what I decided to do, what felt like the best path for me, was to get a master's degree in engineering. So this is me on the day of my graduation with my mom and my grandma. I really thought that this was my ticket out of that traditional mold, that mold that seemed kind of stifling and oppressive to me, into something better. And I found out very quickly after that. I started my professional career in engineering, at a local utility company, and I felt like I was kind of not being taken seriously, not being acknowledged for my accomplishments and my skills. And it turns out that Utah is the state in the US that has the highest gender pay gap of any state in the nation. So women are not earning as much as men here to a very great degree. So it wasn't just me who was experiencing this, it was a lot of my coworkers and colleagues and a lot of other professional women who were experiencing this kind of being held back in their careers. And also a lot of women are being held back in their homes because they're taking on so much labor, they're taking on so much of the mental load, all of those things that we're still talking about often. It's a really prevalent thing here where I live. So that was kind of how things got started for me. And then I got married, and this is a few pictures of my family. I got married, and I really thought that my husband, who also had an engineering degree, who worked with me, who wasn't intimidated by the fact that I had these professional accomplishments and I had this education and I made more money than him, that didn't seem to bother him. He was the first guy who felt that way, that we would have a different kind of relationship at home. But we didn't, at least not at first. And that was a big struggle for me. I didn't quite know what to make of it. I didn't know what to do with it. When I was trying to advocate for myself and say, hey, I'm not cool with how this is going, it wasn't going well. And I know now that are better ways I could have advocated for myself, but also my husband had to change his perspective on what the expectations would be of me as a wife and mother. So we struggled with that for a long time. By the time my second child came around, my daughter, my kids are less than 18 months apart. I was really tired of my toxic work environment, and I decided to quit my job and stay home with my kids. I had some mixed feelings about it, but it felt like the best solution for the situation that we were in. So I quit my job. I very quickly realized I was not cut out for being a full-time stay-at-home parent, and I went back to work. And for a while, I was running a math tutoring center, and I knew that that wasn't a really great long-term solution. So I started thinking about what would I want to do if I got to choose something that I was really interested in and passionate about, that would use my skills and also earn me the income that I wanted to earn and help me make an impact on the world. And so I started out my coaching business working with working moms, and I wanted to kind of help them with the logistical aspects of balancing home and family and career ambitions. And as I was starting to interview women and kind of think about, okay, how am I going to really focus in on these women that I want to serve, I was finding that they were having the same issues that I was, that they really felt held back because having a career and doing everything at home was just not feasible. It was exhausting. They were getting burned out. They were having tension in their relationship because of it. And it was then that I realized that because I was still struggling with this, I didn't feel confident to help women in this area. I needed to figure it out, not just because it would benefit me and my family, but because I wanted to help pave the way for other women to be able to see that it was possible and to know how to do it. So I started my journey, or, was reinvigorated in this journey of really creating an equitable, loving partnership. So this was us just a few years ago. We have made so much progress in our marriage. And I also believe that it is a trauma healing effort to go from, feeling disadvantaged, taken advantage of. I use the word oppressed, not because I think that my husband was intentionally oppressive, but because the culture that we live in and what we expect of women is oppressive, in my opinion. So I believe that this work is trauma healing because we are setting up not only ourselves, but the future generations to have healthier relationship dynamics. And healing trauma is all about being able to really be connected with people that you care about. So that's where I'm at on this. And I also believe that to heal our trauma as women and mothers, we need the courage to challenge some of these generational patterns of oppression and burnout. So it's not just about regulating your nervous system and being okay with everything. It's about having the courage to speak up and say, hey, we deserve better. All of us deserve better. Our husbands deserve better. Our parents who came before us, who maybe didn't have the resources or awareness to do this work, they deserve to see us heal. Our children deserve a healthier model of relationships. This is my mentor, Terry Real, who I'm training with right now in the Relational Life Therapy program. And I love how he puts this, how he frames this motivation and incentive that we have for the work that we're doing. He says family dysfunction rolls down from generation to generation like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares the children that follow. And I really do feel very deep in my heart a passion for this work because of this. The pattern that I feel like I'm healing, that I feel called to heal, is this pattern of kind of selfish, entitled men and long-suffering, patient, accommodating women. It's destructive for both men and women to operate that way and to not have equitable partnerships. It hampers our ability to really feel connected and safe in our relationships. So some of the patterns that I see with generational trauma, oppression, burnout that affects women and mothers specifically, economic dependence. I mentioned earlier in Utah, women earn so much less than men. So actually they become, even though women work often, they still can become economically dependent on men. There's this concept of what I've heard called divorce-driven poverty. Women who do choose to get divorced will often suffer from poverty at a very high rate, whereas men that get divorced see their economic situation improve. Unequal household labor, that has been kind of the core issue that my husband and I have dealt with for so long. Decision-making power. Often men assume that it's their right and responsibility to make decisions on behalf of their family often without their wife's input. This is something that John Gottman has studied. And he even said recently that even though there's been a lot of movement in women's liberation, this is a pattern still where men really struggle to accept influence from their wives. It feels, one of the ideas is that it's emasculating to share power with our spouses. I don't believe that's true, and I don't believe it's good for any of us to treat our relationships that way. And then there's this other kind of social pressure element where there's this idea that women should prioritize their husbands and family above their own needs. We have kind of the counter message of putting yourself first, which I don't think is necessarily the right message either. But a lot of times as women, we feel a lot of guilt about putting ourselves first, about taking care of ourselves, even just our own basic needs for rest and exercise and leisure time. One of the statistics that I see thrown out often is men on average get about 2 to 3 more hours of leisure time per week than their spouses do. And it's kind of just baked into our society. And it's really hard to break out and shift into something new. But I think it's essential for us and for our families. So all of these kind of pressures and these cultural norms, I think, just drive women straight to burnout. It's almost inevitable when we have these unrealistic expectations, and then we also have no avenue to stand up and advocate for change. Burnout is just kind of the reality that we live in, and sometimes I think we even see it celebrated on Instagram. It's like, well, we can't do anything about it, so we might as well make light of it or just accept that that's how it is. And that is not what I want for myself. That is not what I want for any of you. And that is not what I want for my children. So what can we do about it? That's the big part. And like I said before, I really think that it requires us to have some courage, to be willing to see that there's a problem. and that you are not the problem. Women have kind of been socialized that if there's something wrong in their relationships, in their neighborhoods, in their families, it's my fault. I need to be skinnier. I need to be a better cook. I need to be a better parent. I need to be kinder and more patient to my husband. I want you to see this as not an individual personal problem, but as a problem kind of in our society, in our communities, in our families, the patterns that we have learned from our families. So we need some awareness, some self-reflection, some time to really sit down and identify what are your needs, what do you value, what are your priorities, and then believe that you deserve a healthy, balanced relationship. And also believe that what's good for you is also good for the people around you. That when you're happy and healthy and your needs are taken care of, that everyone is better for it. So see that there's a problem, believe that you're not the problem, and then have the courage to take action. So if you're dealing with this issue and there's an imbalance in your relationship, set aside some time to talk to your partner about what's going on. Remember, this is one kind of principle that I love, and this is from the book Fierce Self-Compassion, written by Kristen Neff. And she talks about how women can kind of embody this mama bear energy. So remember that you're not just advocating for yourself, you're advocating for your communities, you're advocating for the other women in your community, and you're advocating for your children. You're advocating for being able to show them a better, healthier way of relating to each other. And then, you start having some of those hard conversations, and keep in mind that you still need to work as a team. So look for mutually beneficial solutions. Mutually beneficial, so not always in their advantage and not always in your advantage, but what works best for us as a couple, what works best for us as a family. And the other thing that I think is really important that we don't hear often enough, we kind of hear a lot about empowering women, almost to the point of women being just as unrelational and aggressive and difficult as men. But I think that we have the power and the capacity to shift from that individual empowerment to what I call relational empowerment. And the way that we do that is we get curious about what makes it hard for our partner or our family members, community members to give you what you want, and what you can do to help them show up for you. So we're looking at ourselves as a team. If I would like my husband to get up early in the morning and help with the kids in the morning, what makes it hard for him to do that for me? And what can I do to help him show up for me? So, men often say, well, you just don't appreciate me. And so you can say, well, can we work on that? I'll be really conscious of trying to acknowledge and appreciate what you're doing. Can you be really conscious about doing this for me? So we can start to kind of incrementally work through some of the imbalances and dysfunctional patterns in our relationship. The other thing that I think is really important is you need a support system. It cannot just be your spouse, but it can't be everyone else and not your spouse. It needs to be both. So build a support system with friends, family. And if you get stuck, if the pattern is just really difficult and you're feeling stuck and you're not making progress, working with a coach or therapist is the best way to get past whatever you're getting stuck with. So we need friends and we need family. We need people that we can lean on without neglecting that primary relationship. So I just wanted to kind of really drive this message home that framing partnership as a win-win is your ticket to making it happen. And you might be the first person to paint this vision that this is good for both of us. And it might take your partner a while to pick up on that. But if you see partnership and having an equitable relationship as you taking away from them and then losing some sort of advantage in the relationship, you're going to struggle. But if you see it as something that's good for both of us and it's good for what we're wanting to model for our kids. It's going to go a lot smoother. It's not going to go perfectly. It's not going to be It's not going to be unmessy. It's not going to be uncomplicated, but it will go better if you believe that partnership is a win-win. So these are just some ideas of what a healthy and equitable partnership looks like. I got many of these from Dr. Julie Hanks. She's kind of an expert in this field of promoting partnership families and partnership couples. So a healthy partnership has shared decision-making power. We don't defer all decisions to one person or the other. We don't do that with financial decisions, parenting decisions, who gets free time on the weekend and who doesn't. We share the decision-making. And then shared access to resources. So that includes financial resources. I think another one that's really important is leisure time, just because men kind of seem to default to feeling entitled to leisure time, even if their wives have never had a break. So can we kind of search for more equity in this area with our financial resources and also our time? Co-parenting. Are we both engaged and involved in parenting the kids and sharing the decision-making about how that's done? Are we kind of taking care of doctor's appointments and dentists and school activities and some of those things in a fair and equitable way? And, this doesn't mean it's going to be 50-50. If you're the parent who works less or doesn't work outside the home, you might take more of that on, but that doesn't mean you can't share it in a way that feels equitable given the situation that you're in. And then mutual support, so emotional support. Do we support each other emotionally? Do we have curiosity about each other's feelings? And then do we also give support for individual goals or career goals? Again, a lot of men kind of assume that if I'm the breadwinner in the family, it's my wife's job to support me and make sacrifices so that I can be successful in my career. Does he also expect to make sacrifices so that you can have a life of meaning and purpose and goals and ambitions, even if you're not prioritizing your career as much as he is? And then we value all contributions. So this kind of goes back to that support for goals. Paid and unpaid contributions should be valued the same. And a lot of times they're not. A lot of times our society has valued paid work and men's work more than unpaid work and women's work. So what can we do to kind of advocate for change in that area? And then just as an important reminder, it will feel scary and uncomfortable to advocate for yourself, especially that if you've been taught that it's not good or safe to rock the boat. I want to encourage you to have courage in that area while also keeping in mind that your safety is important. If you are in a situation where there's risk for physical harm, get some support from a qualified provider so that you have a safety plan, so that, while doing this work to advocate yourself and getting yourself into a healthy situation doesn't put your physical safety at risk. So thank you guys all so much for listening to my presentation. I hope it's been motivating and inspiring and helped you to think about kind of what it looks like to have a partnership and how you can advocate for it. I just want to let you know that you don't have to do it alone. We're in this together. And like I said, I work with individuals and I work with couples. I also have women's groups that occasionally happens, women's support groups. And I also have this offer for all of you. I have a relational resilience course. I normally sell it for $27. I'm offering it to all of you as a free mini course. And this is a great course for you if you're kind of trying to build up that resilience and that courage and that I want to kind of get myself into a more steady place before I start doing some of this work. That resilience course is great for that. And if you listened to what I had to say today and you're like, I really like some individual help and support, you can schedule a free consult with me and I can talk to you about a few options of how we could work together to help you accomplish that. So thanks again, and I'd love to hear from all of you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. If you would like more of the Mamahood After Trauma community, make sure to look in the description of this episode for the link to become a Mamahood After Trauma Inner Circle member. Until next time, Mama, keep